Okay, so I want to talk to you about how to find peace in your life and business. So I have quite a few things that come to mind that help me do this, and maybe it can help you as you think through what you're doing. So the first thing is there's this book called, I think it's called Hell No or Hell Yeah or No or something by Derek Sivers. I think that's how you say his name. Anyways, one of my clients recommended that I read that again, but here's basically the story is he every day he rides his bike down a hill, um, and he goes really hard, like charges, right? And he says every time, on his workout, he looks down at his watch and says, 43 minutes. And it's like every time, 43 minutes, 43 minutes, 43 minutes. And then what he says is, okay, one day I'm just going to like stop and slow down a little bit and really enjoy it. I'm not going to like cruise the whole way, but I'm definitely going to slow down and kind of enjoy the ride a little bit more. And so he basically says that he goes about 50% less. So he's going down the hill and he comments, he says, he sees all these new things like dolphins, or I forget the examples he uses. He does say something about he looks up to see the birds, and then birds like poop in their mouth and his stuff. It poops in his mouth and stuff. And it's kind of funny, but he noticed all these new things. Like it was basically a different bike ride, completely different. Brand new, completely different, 50% less effort. So you would think that maybe that adds time. Like maybe it's 90 minutes or 60 minutes, 50% dialed back. But what he found is that when he looked down his watch that time, it was 45 minutes and not 43 minutes. And I think the lesson is implied there. Basically, the equation is this, is if you work 50% less in terms of effort and speed, you only really go from 100% output to 97, 98% output, which is pretty insane. And so, okay, it's a 2% loss and it's easier, right? 50% less work. Wow, why am I moving so fast? But I think what's interesting is that it's a whole new world of curiosity and useful insight. So during the times when he's looking up and seeing the birds and all this, those are useful moments, right? And I've really noticed that I've adopted this lately. So yeah, like for me, I was speaking on the phone with a friend today, and he texted me. He's a really good friend. I really enjoy talking to him. He texted me this morning. It's been like 6 months since we caught up. He said, are you free today? And I said, yep. Just let me know when. And he's like, okay, like I'm free for the next 2 hours. Then I got to do this and this. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go in my golf cart and drive down to the beach and go get a coffee and just walk on the beach and talk with him. And I was like, hey, how's it going, man? And he said, dude, what are you up to today? And I said, nothing, just chatting with you, basically. That's the only thing I have. I don't have anything else on my calendar. And he said, dude, how are you just free all day? And maybe he thinks it's because I have like enough, like tons of money, so I don't have to do anything. But I don't know. Like, I think I'm just paying attention to that 50% less thing and 2% output, and then the world of curiosity. I'm giving myself time, basically. So I don't know. I'm really enjoying the fact that I don't feel guilty if I don't have a day to do anything. You know what I mean? And by the way, there is stuff to do. So my company, there's tons to do. There's a funnel we're making. We're trying to launch. We're breaking into cold soon. We have basically, I'm planning an in-person event at my place here in La Jolla next week. A week away, and I don't have much of it planned. And I'm trying to manage to get some funds together to invest in some of the businesses that I'm working with, because I'm thinking that's maybe a good call for the future of the business. And there's tons of work to do, right? Tons of work to do. And my content dude's like got 4 videos that he wants me to record, content inside of our community, right? And I've got this brand project that I'm doing, rebranding college, a company. I've got tons of stuff to do, but today I'm not doing any of that, because if I worked on that all day today, I would be having 100% output, and I'd be missing everything about the world of curiosity, right? If I didn't do that today, I look at that as I worked 50% less. And what that tells me is I have a 2% less output. But I can tell you right now that because I chose to do that, I have a world of curiosity and useful insight that I got from today. The call that I had with my friend really invigorated me. And, he even told me about a possible investment about his SaaS company that I want to invest in now. It would have never have happened if I just said, I got to get back to work, right? So anyways, that's like one point in terms of like how I find peace, is it's very peaceful to work that way. The second thing that comes to mind is this idea of removing moral judgments from your work. So what I mean by that is whenever I hear the word like should or shouldn't, I basically question like, why should? Why is that word like keep popping up, should? And so in my context, I guess what I struggle with is I really should build that funnel today, or I really should figure out the branding side of things, or I really should, all those things I mentioned, right? I really should see if I can rent some more chairs, all that stuff. But it really goes even deeper, where, I had a business that was doing multiple millions in the top line revenue, right? And I always think to myself, like, I really should have the businesses that I'm working on now get there as fast as possible. But I'm really okay with the fact that's going to happen as opposed to it should. In other words, I'm not saying that, you're seeing it now, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be like that. I'm just saying that I'm questioning why should. And I find that if I remove these moral judgments from the game that I'm trying to play, that I'm just much more at peace. Because the moral judgment is, at least in my worldview, in how I see it, is there's some reason to justify myself or find my identity in my work, or seeking to find the value of who I am or what I'm doing. And that's incredibly, self-imposing when it comes to moral judgments. And I just find a lot of freedom when I release myself from the should thing, the moral judgment thing. Even just like, I was 3 minutes late to a call, or I don't know, like this kind of stuff. The moral judgments, when I judge my performance or I judge my lack of performance, I often find that that's where the peace dwindles down. It doesn't serve me when I remain true to these moral judgments that I impose on myself, or my performance, or the guilt or shame that comes with the imposed worldview, like of productivity, or I don't know, any of that stuff. I will say this, is that the thing that really moved the needle for me when it comes to these moral judgments things is, it's easier said than done, but I've removed the comparison game. So I'm not going to name the names, but like I hear a lot of folks that, like on a call this week, somebody said, "Oh, you're like Blake, you're like this person and this person," and so these are sort of like gurus or people in the industry, and to be honest, I can't get away from their ads. I can't get away from like their reels or any of this stuff. And there's a much deeper story to that. But I've found that if I just stop comparing myself to all these people, that brings me a lot more peace. Because it's a very synthetic world out there. Especially if you pick up your phone. I mean, your phone, I have mine right here. It's got an apple on it with a bite out of it. That reminds me of Genesis, right? It promises you everything. So, you will know good from evil. You will basically understand everything, right? And when you pick that up and you start looking at, or when I pick it up and I start looking at things that pop into my feed or anything like that, I often impose moral judgments on them, or they should do this or they shouldn't do this, or the jealousy game or the comparison game. There's no reason to impose that judgment on yourself. And so, you know what? I kind of am just removing that comparison game. It's not a game I want to play. It's not something that I find a lot of peace in. So once I've removed myself from that comparison game, I really felt freedom. and I could just breathe, you know? Um, so yeah, removing these moral judgments, I think, is a huge one. I think the next one that comes to mind is the burden of money. Now, this might be easier said than done. I understand that I'm looking at the beach and there's a sunset and there's multi-million-dollar homes all around me. Okay. However, everybody struggles with the burden of money, including myself. And, here's what I've found is that whenever I'm dealing with like the burden of money, like when I talked about I should be making this much, or a big bill's coming up, or like the elevator in my apartment in New York is broken, and so now the condo board we're trying to gather funds, and that's a big bill, and all this nonsense. Whenever I'm in that position, I make really squirrely decisions in my business. I start compromising, I start doing stupid things, I ask stupid questions, and I talk to my clients all the time, right? And whenever they do squirrely things and ask silly questions, I tend to just cut through and say, what's your financial situation looking like? And it's like the elephant in the room. It's not good, or any of this stuff. And what I have to do is go, well, let's just take a look at the numbers. And half the time, the financial situation is fine. It's just all the moral judgments and the burden of I need to hit this and this is just, that's gone. You don't need to put that on there, right? So, but sometimes, half the time, really, there is a financial situation where if there isn't money coming in the next 90 days, and things aren't going to go well. And I've experienced that firsthand. And that pops up all the time for me. So here's the thing about that. Okay. Let's assume, and this I experienced this firsthand, all right? Let's assume you got tons of money in the bank, income coming in, consistent income, whatever it may be. What kind of things do you start focusing on? Or what do you hear people saying that you should focus on? Usually in my space, it's all of these sort of luxurious things around optimizing. So like the crap I'm talking about, the self-awareness, the physical activity, the being able to enjoy your free time, having like a unique lived experience with useful insight and curiosity, and using that as like some big points of leverage, et cetera, right? Now, you hear all that and go, that's very easy for you to say because you've got money or whatever. But I'm telling you that basically that right there is honestly the biggest lever to pull when you're dealing with money, when you have the burden of money, right? So let me be a little bit more concrete with this. Everyone knows that working on your self-awareness, alignment is good, right? But I think the point I'm trying to make is, but it seems like a luxury. Like you only do those things once money's taken care of. But I've found that this to be true, and hopefully it's helpful for you as you think about like peace and finding peace in your work, is instead people think that they will need to really get to all of those luxurious things like self-awareness and working on yourself and all this stuff after you solve the money issue. It's kind of like, well, I have a $40,000 bill coming up, whatever. I just got to find a way to get more clients. Once I do that, then I'll focus on, more life as a practice and the awareness and so forth. However, just speaking from firsthand experience, the secret to that, the trick to that, isn't to solve the money issue right now with weird, quirky, new inventions of your business. It's actually to slow down and fix the internal problem, right? Why does this problem exist? Maybe the awareness and working on myself and having the space and slowing down and taking a deep breath, maybe that is the cure and the symptom of this problem. Once you slow down, and I've experienced this as well, once I slow down and I fix the internal problem that I'm dealing with inside, what it does is it makes the burden a lot more difficult. And that requires me to have really courage and faith that I can overcome that fear or step into that fear. And once I do that, the money issue is usually solved. Otherwise, you're just kind of kicking the ball down the field and just, I don't know, it's not really a game you want to play because there's that burden of money will always be there, right? And what I find is that The things that I've built have often been out of scarcity. Um, but when I slow down and realize that's not actually fuel for me, that's actually killing me, you know, then when the burden of money comes up, I don't try to fix it or solve it or try to react. I just go, this is a real big burden. It's so important for me to slow down and be curious about my thoughts, where I am, do my routine, just get in a good rhythm there. And then from that place, I have to have faith that it'll work out. And I'm telling you, 10 times out of 10, it works out. What's cool about that is it requires you to level up as like an entrepreneur, right? So yeah, this burden of money thing, I'm telling you right now, like our highest paid engagement in college, um, the whole conversation is shifted down into a different frequency when people start talking about money. There's something about money and the burden of money that completely destroys the energy and the positivity in the world and in the room. So anyways, this burden of money thing, it's something to be curious about. The next thing that comes to mind in terms of finding peace here is, I can tell you this, is I've chosen to remove timelines and projections. I used to be somebody who dreamed big, and it's not that I don't dream big now, but I dreamed big, and the problem is that I then went to a Western cyclical time frame. In other words, I pulled up a calendar of my year. Okay, January, February, March, April, and I just, the whole thing, and I just spawned out of thin air, what things do I want to do? How much do I want to make? Like I'm this like crooked engineer of my life, right? Envision what you're going to do and, you know, um, manifest all that nonsense, right? So what I would do is, there is some validity to that, by the way. I don't mean to discredit it, but what I would do is I'd take the whole year and I'd go, I want to do this thing, I want to do this thing, this thing. I did this last year, actually 2 years ago, and I basically wrote, I want to make this much money, I want to do it at this time, I'm going to go on vacation here. And so what I did was I imposed my entire life into a set times, right? Restrictions. So that went back into this one of the points I said is removing the moral judgments, the burden of money, working less, all that stuff. Starting the year off with, this is how much I'm going to make, this is how much I'm going to do, I will do it in these time frames, etc., etc. It really got me in a funk, because if I didn't hit those projections, I'd feel like a failure, and that would spiral into this moral judgment thing. And if I did hit it, I'd think too highly of myself, and then I'd feel sadness because that was easier than I thought, and I wish I would have dreamed bigger. And so, I actually think the invention of the clock is like one of the worst inventions. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, and it's kind of silly to say it. But I sit here on my deck, and I've gotten used to sitting here and writing and reading, and there's church bells down there, and every 30 minutes I'll hear a church bell. That's kind of enough for me to go, okay, 30 minutes has gone by. And that's great, because I've chosen basically to remove myself from the clock. And I don't have a schedule other than a few calls that I do with my paid engagement, right? And then everything else is very flexible. And I don't fill up my free time with work, because I don't look at it as like free time and then work time. It's just time, you know? So I like to live my life by seasons and thinking slower. When I was living full time in New York, I did that for 4.5 years. There's something really cool about seasons is, winter's coming, spring's coming, there's an excitement in the air and people feel it, and it causes you to think more cyclical way, as opposed to 9 to 5, all this stuff. So, you have to think a little bit slower. And usually, by the way, that brings me more wealth, more enjoyment, more freedom, and ultimately more peace. So I would encourage you to remove timelines and projections. They're moral, strategic, like borders or boundaries for you to impose like synthetic progress or something. It's not helpful. I'll say this: it doesn't bring you peace. It doesn't bring me peace. Um, and by the way, I'm not lazy. I've I know how to make money, and I know how to enjoy my life, and I know how to build wealth, and I know how to work hard. They're not two opposing ideas. Okay, the next thing that comes to mind is how I get paid. You know, I want you to think about this. If you're like an entrepreneur, you should buy into this idea. Here's me saying should. It is helpful to buy into this idea. Um, think about it. With in the corporate world, like here in America, there's W-2 salary world, or W-2 plus bonus. All my friends in New York, they get some big salary, and at the end of the year they get a bonus, and that's how they get paid, right? They have agency over their life, but they aren't accountable for the money that they bring home, other than to make the corporation happy. Now, I'm blanket statement that I understand that it's a general blanket statement, but just think about like how employers are paid, right? I will ask you, how often are employees paid? Every 2 weeks or every month, right? As an entrepreneur, it's much different, right? Think about this. As an entrepreneur, especially if you're an entrepreneur in like the space that I'm in, you're controlling businesses. Like you're a steward of the thing that you're controlling. And at a certain point, like, your first $1,000,000 or whatever for the year, it sort of links up with your lifestyle, and it's kind of a job for you, and you're doing everything. Once you get beyond that and past that, you really become an owner, not something that like this business does something for me, right? So as I think about this, think about how to translate the corporate identity and how you get paid into the entrepreneur identity. It's really corrupt. And I've thought about this for a little bit. Is an entrepreneur should not here I am should not appeal or digest the like corporate way of getting paid, which is getting paid every 2 weeks or every month. And you hear it all the time, especially in the e-learning world, which is, my goal is to get to $100,000 a month, or my goal is to get to $500,000 a month. All of that's great, okay? Or it's, my goal is to get to $12,000 in monthly recurring revenue or whatever. Now, what is that telling you? What's the theory behind this per month? What is that? Or recurring. What is going on there? What it's doing is it's nodding to what the corporate world, I'm getting all worked up here, what the corporate world is promising you, which is safety, security, and don't worry, if you stay here, we'll pay you. And you don't have to worry about hunting and getting your food, right? But if you impose those same principles and worldviews onto the entrepreneurial space, you will engineer your business to fit in just like that, which is, I need to hit this much per month, or I need this much in recurring revenue, or any of this stuff. But the whole per 2 weeks or per month or monthly recurring and all this stuff, it's incredibly small-minded thinking, because you're just trying to find safety and security and consistency in a world of an entrepreneur space where there is no consistency. There is none of that. So you're imposing this corporate way of getting paid, and it will limit you. And I've experienced this. It will limit your potential, and it limited mine for sure. So okay, how do you get out of that? You have to remove that. Again, this is about peace. How do you find peace in this? You have to remove this burden of how you get paid. I've found that you have to think bigger. So by thinking bigger, it's thinking more cyclically. So let's just put it in like simple terms, right? If you want to make $1 million, okay? Let's just do that. If you want to make $1 million, I'll pull up my trusty calculator here. And the price of your product or offering or service or program or whatever it may be, I tell this to my clients all the time, is $12,000, okay? $1 million divided by 12,000, that's 83 people, okay? So $1 million business equals the price of the item, in this case 12,000, plus the number of people to sell it to. In this case, it's 83 people, which means it's equal to, I need to find, this year, it's not, I need to make $100,000 a month. But you have to remove that. It's not, I want to make $1 million. It's, this year, my total addressable market is 83 people. Just sit with that and go, this year, I need to convince 83 people to come along for the journey that I'm preparing for them, right? You could really picture it. Like, I could fit 83 people on my deck, you know, which means I don't need a huge audience, which means I don't need to dance on TikTok. I don't need to do that much paid advertising. You know, I really just need to find 83 people. And you can chop it up either way. If that feels weird, well, 83 is a lot. Okay, well, let's say that's a $24,000 product, right? You can do the work on that. 24 grand, that's 41 people, okay? Or maybe it's $1 million and your product's 4,800. Okay, so $1 million divided by 4,800, that's 208 people. Okay, you look at your digital assets and go, okay, how many people can I move around to help, right? And when I think about it that way, it just brings me so much more peace. Because then I'm going to be a little bit religious here, but I start praying for the lives of those people that I haven't met yet. You know, who are the people that I'm supposed to serve this year? Bring them to me. I want to help them, right? And you start looking at your current clients and go, maybe there's more significant ways to help them, and I don't need to find more people, right? And now you start thinking about recurring revenue models and going, well, if I charge a yearly recurring revenue model for these individuals, next year, if 40% of them are new, I don't need to get 83 people. I can just keep these people, retain these people, and find a few more. And so it balances out your life, I've found. So you have to think of it that way. Like, you can't think like a corporate person per month, every 2 weeks. It'll just give you stress. And I understand this because you got rent or whatever, you have your mortgage, you got bills. I get it. And it just so happens that those are billed every month. But you can't engineer your life and business to energetically link up with that burden. You have to think a little bit bigger, right? So personally, I've structured my life to try to diversify. So it's, I have income from rental properties, and some months are great, some months are bad. And it's not just income, it's appreciation. And sometimes those properties go up almost all the time, and sometimes they go down almost never. I'm too young to have experienced too much of a downturn, but I understand it'll come in the future. And then I have revenue from my e-learning biz. I've got that going on, and then I have like revenue from other businesses that I've sold or started or whatever. And leaning into the diversity of things, and not just that I have multiple streams of income, nothing like that. It's just leaning into the diversity of time. This thing makes more, sometimes it makes less. This thing makes more, sometimes it makes less. This thing's faster in terms of recurring. This thing is a bigger project long term. You have to remove the clock, as I said, and how you get paid. If you're an entrepreneur, you signed up to be accountable for the agency of your life, right? Lean into it. Don't impose these cyclical corporate things onto your life. It'll just give you stress. That's how I've been able to find peace through this, is just remove how you get paid, right? Another thing that comes to mind as I think about the peace that I have in my life is looking for, this is a little bit more of a like a business type move, is looking for ways to multiply. So to put a multiple on things. So the individual I was chatting with today, for sake of privacy, I'll keep his name with me, is he's got an incredibly successful e-learning business. And dude, he's started a software business as well. And both of them are doing, like one's doing 7 figures, the other one's just underneath that. It's pretty impressive that people are doing so well now. It's great to hear, right? I see it in my clients, they're crushing it. So, anyways, spoke to him and he was right at the revenue marker where you could probably sell the business if you did a couple things. And so, what I found is that to have more peace, you have to think on a multiple. So I'll give you a little bit of example. In this case scenario, his business was reaching a point where the way that he got clients and the way he acquired clients is mainly through organic efforts. And it was a one-time model, and it was sort of set up. And then he has the software business over here. And, if you wanted to double the e-learning business, then you have to, equate how much work is that going to be? What's that going to look like? Is that going to be stressful? Is that going to be peaceful? Then you look at the SaaS business and go, okay, is that a distraction or whatever? But after going through a little bit of experience in the like private equity type world with, acquisitions of businesses and stuff, we just did some math and went, well, wait a second. If you just put these two businesses under one portfolio company, right? The multiple on that's insane. You can take the e-learning business and go, here's one arm of the business. You can take the SaaS business and go, these are products that I'm selling to my customers. It's two different business models under one roof. When somebody who looks at that to buy that company, that on profit, that's like 4-6x multiple, You just made your business more valuable just by restructuring it and setting it up that way. And so I think if I were him, I'd feel relieved that I wouldn't have to do more work on YouTube and try to bring in more clients or more people. Hey, I'm thinking holistically. I want to add multiples to my business. And, for me, I'm really convinced of this. More people is never the answer. What do I mean by that? It's with my business, I have an e-learning business right now that I really love. And if I'm like, okay, I want to get this to 10 million, 100 million in the next few years, if I were to think with less leverage and not think about multiples, I'd probably put on the more people hat and go, that's it. Let's get more people in the door and let's raise the price and blah, 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 But the reality is that it's a very stressful game. And there's a way to do that that's 10x more valuable and more peaceful, which is to relinquish the burden of more people is never the answer, right? It's never the answer. So I'll tell you a tiny story of interaction I had with one of my clients a couple weeks ago. We were on a call and we basically had like a 15 to 30 minute exchange, and he's one of my favorite clients. He commented, he said, dude, that's really valuable. Thanks. And I'm like, yeah, glad I could help. And then he made a comment like, I think this will make me like an extra couple $100,000 like in the next few weeks or whatever. And I'm like, dude, that's great. That's like great to hear. And he's like, this is the amount of impact I think is huge. And something came to me. I was just like, what? Stop. How do you think this will affect your clients? And he's like, oh, it'll be massive. It'll help this, and this. And I said, well, think about it. This decision that we came up together and how it'll affect you personally, the money it'll make you, as it pertains to your business, I'm curious. How much more money will your clients make? And we did some math. And we looked at all of it, and conservatively, there's about $50 million of impact that had on the marketplace. I don't mean I said something and now he's going to make $50 million. No, it means I said something and he's going to make $200,000 and his clients are going to make an extra whatever. And the sum total of that is $50 million. And I just said to myself, okay, this whole idea of multiple. Wow. Great client, great individual, one of the most fabulous people to work with, 15-minute exchange, $200,000 in his pocket, $50 million of value created, and not synthetic, weird, passed down advice value. I mean, true, substantial GDP value is created in the marketplace. Now, I don't see that. I don't see $50 million in my pocket, right? But that's a massive multiple. 15 to 30-minute conversation with him, $50 million into the economy. Incredible. Now, multiple, okay? If I were to go and shut my laptop up and go, okay, I'm going to go to the beach or hang out or whatever, and then I come to the conclusion, well, I need to bring more people into my business to make more money, then I've missed out on an opportunity to be curious. Wait a second. 15 to 30-minute conversation, $50 million of GDP value. I need to be insanely curious about this. How can I do more of that? And how can I partner and attach myself to those individuals where there's massive GDP value being created? There's got to be a way to partner with those individuals inside my network and pour fuel on the fire and help even more and focus on that. That's like a multiple game. Now, that gets me excited, and it removes the burden of putting the gas on more people in the front door, and it gets me excited about fun, peaceful, incredibly significant relationships, right? That's looking for ways to multiply, right? That's where the peace is found. I sink into that and go, there's something there. $50 million of GDP value. That's cool. I don't need to worry. There's enough energy here. It'll be okay, right? that's how I think about this whole peace thing with bigger or multiple, right? That's how to, in my opinion, to my judgment, that's how to think bigger without thinking like more, right? Um, Another thing that comes to mind is um, my clients, and maybe this could put a stone in your shoe about how to think about your clients. You know, some of them have become good friends of mine. And I don't just mean like I'm friendly with my clients. I mean, some of my best friends are coming from my client list. Maybe that's sad. Maybe that's weird. I don't know. Um, but I don't care. That brings me a lot of peace. Because now it's not this weird, like I've got my friends over here and I talk to them about work, and then I've got my clients and I put on my hat and do this. I want to become friends with them. You know, in other words, I want my clients to be people I can be friends with. And what's really cool about this is it brings me a lot of peace, because in this the kind of digital age, you know, there's never been a more incredible time to meet new people. And you know, it's because we're it's a cool plane. Um, it's because we're connected on the internet, right? To everybody we can meet. And if you make an impact in their lives, you know, in my clients' lives, they're gonna like you. And guess what? Because I've removed attachment from getting more people in, I'm more curious about their business. So it just starts more conversations and it becomes friendly. And so here's what's cool about this, though. Here's where the peace part comes in. There's transparency now. So if I'm having like a rough time, or I don't understand the direction of my business, or I want to experiment with my business, I don't need to go join like some $200,000 mastermind to find out the secrets about how to deal with it. Or I don't need to go to my neighbors and ask their advice. I can just call my clients and go, I'm thinking about doing this. Is that something you would buy and enjoy? If it's not something you'd buy, can you help me figure out what the price needs to be? There's the church bells. I hear them. You know what I mean? Like, I can just call them, and it's great. So when I'm feeling all of these things, I have a question, experiment, you know, I have a rough time, I'm calling my friends. And it just so happens that they have the answer because they're also my clients. So what I do is I then use it as an opportunity to go for like a walk on the beach. You know, I go with my golf cart, you know, go down to the beach, and I call up my favorite client and ask for help. And because I've helped them, they're willing to help me, right? And so I became, you know, close friends with a few of my clients, and we just want to help each other. Boy, is that peaceful. I've found so much peace in doing that. It's absolutely encouraging that's my life right now. So I want more of that. Another thing that comes to mind is this is a big one as I'm thinking about it now, is I'm so guilty of this, is bringing the future into the present. Perfect example. I talked to one of my clients today. He's one of my best friends, right? And you know, I've been working with him for a year or so, and you know, he mentioned something to me. I was planning out. I did this today. I'm so guilty of it. I told him the price increase of some of the offerings I have, some of the 10x multiple things that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get, you know, some funding to invest in companies and so forth. And I painted like a pretty ambitious, cool, clear vision. And because he's my client, because he knows me well, and because we're friends, he just said, "You do this, dude. You see the vision very clearly, and you try to bring the future into the present." And I'm going, what's wrong with that? Isn't that how you move forward? But he reminded me today, he said, no, it's perfectly fine to see clearly where you want to go. But it's violent and forceful to get to work, right? It's clear in my mind, and then if I hang up the phone and say, okay, time to get to work, it's very violent because I'm taking the vision, I'm putting it in, said this is the time, this is this. But it's forceful, it's violent. Imagine me trying to have conversations with my clients with that energy. It's not going to go well. So the way that I found peace was I just said, okay, that's where we're going. Cool. The time will come. I just need to keep that vision and let it play it out. I don't need to go fast or slow. I just need to get clear on that vision, and it'll all fall into place. And massaging that into me, you know, with my time today on the beach. I'm going, cool. There's a lot of peace in that. So I think in my younger self, not that I'm that old, or yeah, I'm not that old, but I would try to, okay, this is what I want to do, and I would project it and let's do it and force myself into it. And so I have a very clear future, and I push into it, and I made it happen. I've done that too many times to where, okay, fine, I made the future into the present, I got the outcome, and then there's immense sadness. My goodness, just let it unfold the way it goes. It's that bike thing. There's so much more curiosity in going from 100%, with 50% down, and then that 2% drop, and then being curious and to have the useful insight about everything else along the way. So I just need to keep the vision and let it play out, and I find a lot of peace in that. Um, this is a more personal one now that I think about it. Peace, peace. Okay, I'm married. Okay, if you're married, you're curious about what I'm going to say, but I find that my wife and I are surrendering, and where there's a lot of turmoil in our decisions and in our home and so forth, it's around things that we're very much resisting. And some of those things are like, oh gosh, are we going to be homeschool people? Like, aren't those people weird? Or, we were kind of like, have a cool apartment in New York, and we were doing that whole thing, plugged into the culture. And now we're kind of here, we bounce around, and, I guess we're not those people that just find all of our identity in being in New York. Or both her and I are feeling a faith and worldview shifting and changing, and it feels uncomfortable. And here's what it is. It's a lack of submission to some of these things that we know are being placed in front of us, but we're resisting. That does not cause peace. So I look at it as an engine, a 2-engine plane, and one engine is fine. Life, business, me, I'm fine. But over here at home with my wife and I thinking about all these, and the resistance, the plane's going like this. So it's just better to submit to the unknown and lean into the things that we don't want to surrender ourselves to. And just open up ourselves to that idea. So it'll seem like overcompensating by saying, "Yep, we're going to be homeschooling," or "Yep, we're not going to be plugged into NYC." It seems like overcompensating, but really it's a submission to something that will align and balance things out. And once we surrender that, there will be more peace, right? So that's something that we're going through now. I was going to say the next thing to do is live in La Jolla and look at the sunset. That'll bring you peace. But the last thing that comes to mind is, and this is encouragement to you, is just try to find peace and contentment in all things. So how do you find peace? Look for peace. That's essentially what I'm saying. But let me put it very simply. If it's not feeling peaceful, just stop. All right? If it's not feeling peaceful, just stop. I've talked to multiple 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs with my clients, and some of them are doing great, and especially with like the e-learning online education space. I felt this too. It's like you eventually get to the point where you're managing the business, and what does that look like? There's a few key players you talk to every week, tons of free time. It runs by itself. You get your dirty hands out of it, and it's running, and then you feel this sadness. I should be working, right? I've like for me, I had so much free time. I learned to fly a plane at one point. But if you put your dirty hands back in the business, then it messes things up. And what I found is that as I remove myself more and more from the business, and with previous ones and this current one, I see the value go up. And so I start thinking, if that's the case, then maybe I'm not valuable. And that's a lie, because I don't find my contentment from my work. I find my contentment through deeper means of how I view life and business. And the peace is knowing that I can show up to a couple meetings with some key players, and then living in a space of free time and going, I'm not going to here to justify my work. I just need to seek peace and contentment. And numbing the pain of that with work or more things to do or anything like this, it's just, if it's not feeling peaceful, just stop, or at least reevaluate. Learn to enjoy every moment, even the painful ones. I've been through a lot of pain in the last couple of years, and I've really come to expect it and be curious about it, and just try to be in the present moment and enjoy it and push through. Anyways, I've felt very, very peaceful in my work. There's there's zeros in the revenue numbers going up because of that, and releasing attachment from that has been very freeing. And I would just encourage you to do the same. There's too many people working too hard, and they don't feel at peace, and it makes me really sad. So I'd encourage you to maybe apply some of these things to what you're doing and try to find peace in your work. Thanks. See you in the next one.